I was like, I don't think I've ever gone to the Hyland before. I'm actually pretty stoked. And then I got here and I saw the lobby and I saw the carpet and I was like, I feel this all feels really familiar. And I feel like I was here during a Shock Stock screening years ago. Woo! So that all makes sense, right? That all tracks, I guess. But anyway, great theater. So I guess this is my second time here. Chad, let's start with you, and we'll get to some audience questions as well. Just a show of hands, and just real quick. I know there's a couple of filmmakers here tonight, but who here in the audience is an actual, is a filmmaker, or someone looking to become a filmmaker? Okay, that's great. Okay, awesome.
Just this one section.
So, let's just start with well, we'll get to some of your questions in just a second, but let's start with how you came up with the concept for this film. I know you've been on the road a bunch, I know you've answered this question before, but I think it's just important to give the audience a sense as to kind of how this story sort of came together, and then how you fleshed it out over time to create what we saw tonight.
Yeah, first off, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, I mean, this idea came from years of trying to figure out what I was going to do next after the last film that I did. It was in 2018, and it was a movie called I'll Take Your Dead. And after that, I mean, the world went to shit. We had COVID, all that, and as well at the same time, I had lost both my parents to cancer, and struggled with it myself as well. And I think after, any writer or artist just trying to kind of figure out what means something to them, I was really struggling because, I had gone through some hard times, and it just everything that I was trying to write that used to be fun, being like, hey, a crazy slasher movie or this or that, it didn't really feel like it meant anything to me. So I was struggling for a while, about 5 years, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And, I had this idea that was based on a dream of this young girl coming in and talking to a therapist, saying that there's something in the room with them. But I could never really figure out what that was going to be. And anytime you try to do a movie with an entity or a ghost or something, it's the hardest part is trying to come up with something original so that, is it from a book? Is it from an artifact? Is it from a religion? Is it from a culture? And everyone's been searching, trying to make the next, movie that's like that, So at a certain point, I stopped trying to think about that and started thinking about, what mattered to me. And I had this idea of what if I created this entity that was like a demonic version of cancer? It does what cancer does. It destroys. It just feeds and feeds and feeds and destroys, and that's its only motivation. And at that point, I got very excited because it meant something to me. It was kind of a villain in my life, and now I could create some characters that would go kick its butt. So at that point, it snapped, and I think I wrote the first draft of the script in 7 days. It just came out, and I got very excited about it, and obviously, reworked the script from there. But it suddenly, meant something to me, and I think, throughout the movie, even at the end, it's almost like its entire layer is kind of like a big tumor. And this is something that I wasn't hey, I want the audience to be able to put this together. This was just special for me, and it inspired me to make this movie. But that's also why it's limited as far as what the mythology of this creature is, because every time I tried to add something in and be like, oh, well, connected to this or whatever, I was like, well, no, it's not what I was excited about. So I kept it vague enough, but also, just enough that it still, could kind of live on its own. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of the evolution of it. And at a certain point, I had the script done, and I went out, and the first people that we went to with it financed it, and luckily we got to go out and make a movie.
And a movie like this is when it has such a personal sort of connection, to you. And we talked about this at another Q&A. Was that you have this image, this vision of what you want on the screen in your head, and I like reading your scripts. So I'm the guy that sometimes Chad comes to me and says, "Here's my script, just give it, let me know, or let me know what you think about it." And I'm always I always have when I read your scripts now, or when I'm close to the final draft, I always have an idea of how I I think about it, and I have an idea of how you would shoot it, because we've been friends for so long. But how close to like the what's on the screen was what you were actually thinking about when you were writing the script?
We had done a lot of movies in the past that were like designed for a certain budget level. This was one of the first movies that I wrote that was like, hey, you know, I'm just gonna write this and, you know, hopefully we can find enough money to actually go out and make it. But it was something that, you know, I've always wanted to kind of, you know, do a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street, where you could like go into someone's nightmares or go into someone's mind, or movies like The Cell. And that was something that I've always wanted to do, but I've never really written or tried to write, because I was always like, damn, you know, like I love Tarsum Singh, but it's like he goes to like 23 countries to shoot his movies, you know, to find the most beautiful places and epic.
More than $200.
Yeah. So it was always very limiting, but this one was just something that I wrote and was like, you know, we're just gonna swing for the fences and see what happens. And even as is, it was a pretty small budget, and you know, I know Evan reading the script as well at the start, I'm sure you can speak to this, is...
Sorry, what are we doing?
How are we gonna do this? So I would say, you know, luckily, a lot of the stuff that was in the script we actually achieved, but there was definitely some stuff that I fought to the end to try to get.
And I killed.
So I've heard about this, and there's this, Evan, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but there was some particular challenges with the grave setup. I don't know if you would care to elaborate, but I'm hoping you will, because you're part of this Q&A, so.
The grave was, the grave was an interesting challenge, because we had it in our head that, you know, you read the script, they're digging a buried person out of a hole, and when you're breaking it down, you realize you have one person in a box at the bottom of a hole, and then another actor as the creature in the hole, and presumably this is all happening in 3 to 4 feet. So originally the plan was we were gonna go into the woods and, you know, do it practically, dig a hole and see how that goes. About a foot down, we hit bedrock. And it was the day we were shooting and we were all there. So we had to we kind of had to think fast. So the way we got around it to like sell the depth that they're digging in was putting the actors in a foot deep hole on their knees with short shovels. And that's how we got through it on that day. But then that kind of resulted in a day of, you know, on the drawing room, or the, you know, figuring out what we're gonna do. And we actually had to go and build a standing set that was, you know, I would say 6 feet long by 6 feet deep, that had mud all over the walls. It was mud caked all over plywood and spray foam painted brown. And we had to build a little trap door at the bottom where the coffin would slide in and we could load the actors in. So there's always a way around every problem and every you know, sheet of bedrock at the bottom of the forest.
I know one of my, we've done this tour, we've gone around the world with this movie, and you know, we've seen different audiences react to it and that sort of thing. And we've had the opportunity to watch this film with a few different audiences over the last 3 weeks. And it's funny, because I always pick up something new from the film every time I watch it. And I think one of my favorite sequences is when Cynthia goes into Randall's mind. And there's all these kind of like, there are all those flashbacks from like of him, and then him realizing that she's in his head. I think it's one of my favorite sequences in the film now. But it's only achievable when you have those types of actors that you're working with. And how beneficial was it working with Sean Ashmore to bring these sort of characters to life and really give the emotional spin to the movie?
Yeah, I mean, we casted everyone very quickly in this movie. We were up against the actor strike that was happening a couple years ago. Right. So we knew we had to start shooting by a certain date, or else we wouldn't be able to finish the movie, and it would be on hold for God knows how long, and we'd probably never finish it. So we reached out to Sean and Ashley, and luckily they both loved the script. They came on board. And entire time, because it was just so ambitious and we were pushing so hard. And I know, like, we sat down pretty much every lunch and it would be like, we're not gonna be able to do this. And I'd be like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, we're gonna figure out a way, and we'll figure out a way. And it would always be like,
God damn it, my name's Chad Archibald, we're gonna make it happen.
And, you know, we didn't always, you know, get to the finish line, but, you know, often we did. But such a huge part of it, and, you know, one of my concerns with the script was, when you're writing something like this and you're reading it on paper, there are moments where you're like, all right, this needs to happen, and this is what I want to do. But there is a world where, like, if an actor isn't on board with this, like, going up and putting your fingers on someone's head and going into their mind can be very cheeseball, you know? There's definitely, you know, I was trying to think of different ways that we'd want to do it or whatever, because it's like, you know, from doing these film festivals and stuff, it's like people are always like, put your 2 fingers on this person's head, we're gonna take a photo in front of the media wall, and I'm always like, oh my God, every one of them looks so bad. So going into this movie, you know, even speaking with our DP, Jeff Mahara, I was like, all right, how are we going to shoot this in a way that this isn't gonna be super cheesy, and, you know, how are, you know, discussing with the actors as well, and like, you know, this is the challenge that they have to overcome with this. And then on top of that, it's like, you know, every day we were shooting so much and we were jumping around the script so much, and it isn't a linear movie in the way that you're like, you know, now we're shooting, you know, we're shooting this scene, but, you know, an hour later we're like, okay, now we're in someone's mind, you know, and now we're 2 layers in their mind, and now, you know, we're block shooting, so we're jumping, you know, between different timelines, and it gets very, very hard to wrap your head around what we're doing that day. And, you know, the actors, Ashley and Sean and everyone, they really knew the script so well that it's like when we had to change something, I'd be like, crap, we're not doing that anymore, now we're going into Randall's mind and we're doing this, you know, it's like they'd be able to come and perform, but not only that, it's like they'd come and they'd be like, all right, I'm challenging things, and they really were like, man, because both of them, like Ashley and Sean, they both, like, I don't know if they had done a movie that was this low budget in a long, long time.
But they had worked together before too on Aftermath,
Yeah.
which is kind of a sort of a happy accident for
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why Sean came on board, because he was like, oh, Ashley's on this, and we had a great relationship. But both of them, you know, both of them just sunk their teeth into the role, and they, you know, performed every single day, no matter how weird it felt and how low budget it felt. You know, they just had to believe it was going to be finished. And during a lot of the interviews that they've done recently, you know, they've kind of admitted that where they're like, we were on set and sometimes being like, is this going to work, or is this like going to be the worst movie we've ever done and ruin our career? And it wasn't until they watched the film that they were like, oh my God, thank God, this turned out awesome. They loved it, they've been so supportive. And you know, they've absolutely have done everything for this movie in the last 3 weeks to kind of promote it, and you know, very thankful for them. But honestly, like at any point, if they gave up faith on the movie and were just like, I'm just gonna call it in, the whole movie would have just turned into a big pile of cheese.
pile of cheese. Yeah, they being awesome. They were great to me as well. They came up and had supporters of the film as well. Not as big as supporters as the people in London, Ontario. Let's turn it to the audience for some questions. Okay, so we'll just start. We'll try and get to everybody, but we are on a time limit until Mike comes in and gives me the old hook. But yeah, let's start right here.
Here? Yeah. Okay, so the reason that I'm here with my sister tonight is because I came to see Seven last week on Friday night. David Fincher 7, one of their films of all time.
Amazing.
And they showed the preview. They showed the preview for your film. And I thought that was fucking fantastic. So I came and it was wonderful, and so it's kind of a full circle thing. And what I found kind of like interesting, there are parallels between Seven and your film in the sense that there's sort of like certain aesthetic choices, like with color, like muted tones and like certain blues and certain greens that are like really sort of like intimate something and suggest something without sort of like washing it over the head with it. And I always love the subtlety of like those kind of colorings, those like colors choices, and you know, those like muted tones and stuff. And I'm always really curious about when I see something like that that's like very sort of like purposeful, what maybe is in your DNA in terms of like where you came film or music or art, like, what instilled in you that sort of like purposeful coloring and textural aesthetic?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always come from a big art department background, and whether it's, coloring in the color lab in post or, dealing with the color palettes on set. A big thing for us, I think Evan may have shot at the original, like at the house that was Cynthia and Jordan's house before, and I think brought it to the table and was like, this house is amazing, but it's all white walls, which is kind of like a thing in film where you're like, I never want to like just shoot against a white wall. It always looks, it's difficult to make it look good. So we went in there, and I remember us talking, and I was like, I really want to go for like gothic academia, like dark forest green. I want like frames on the walls, like all those like little details to kind of like give the room texture and give this house texture. And then, even in coloring, it's like going in and like just tinging it a little bit green to kind of give it that it changes the entire world from, when we went in there and took photos to when we actually had a camera up and had all the walls painted and new curtains, and it was like a completely different environment. And it was scary, it was scarier because it's not just in a bright white room. But yeah, I mean, going through the entire movie as well, like trying to kind of figure out, one, how do you create these worlds that, you would believe that you'd be going into, with a color palette, like how do you kind of create that contrast so that, whenever you go into one of these dream worlds or when someone's mind, that it's like, it feels different and it feels a little surreal and it feels like, the pigment in people's skins are slightly different, and, anything that you can kind of do to kind of like really convey that, bring people's imaginations to life there. Yeah, I love that stuff, so.
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's interesting because it sort of like blurs reality with like the sort of liminal sort of dreamlike quality, which is really cool. Like it suggests something, it doesn't just like tell you the narrative, it's like kind of like ask you to sort of participate. And I think like those kind of colors that really do that with film, like, to your credit, that was great, I loved it. Looked beautiful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Bunch of questions over here. Okay, let's start right in the middle here.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Love the film. It was fantastic. I just wanted to. So every project that a filmmaker works on is an opportunity to learn something new. What was your big takeaway from this production?
Oh, good question. I don't even know how to answer that.
Learning how to work with union camera teams. I feel like Evan had done that before. You had done that before, right? Yeah. So it's like I know there was many days where I was just like, okay, we're gonna go do this, and all of a sudden people would stop and awkwardly look at each other and be like, Evan would come in and be like, no, we can't do that. That's gonna be a gimbal fee. That's $300, and yeah, we don't have that in the budget. So from a technical aspect, it was a huge challenge. I had done a lot of movies with no rules because we had no unions, and I was like, it's just whatever is going to make the movie better. And then, as budgets get bigger and you start dealing with so many unions, it's like, oh man, Agatha's running away and the cops have to chase her. Oh no, they're extra cops, and if you make them chase her, that's a stunt. Now we need stunt coordinators to come in. So now they have to briskly walk behind, and I was like, this looks so dumb. You cut it all out of the movie. So I mean, learning those challenges, I think now going into another movie, I would be like, all right, well now I know I can't write that scene because it's going to cost too much money and cost, whatever. But creatively, every movie's so different. I mean, it doesn't matter how many movies you do, it's like every movie you go into is like a whole new adventure, and it really feels like you're just relearning how to make movies. You've got your little tool belt of like things that work and really what you want to do, but anytime you're shooting a movie at a low budget, it's like you go in with your shot list, you got everything all organized, and like 2 hours into the day, you're like, well, screw that's all gone. We're just gonna have to rewrite this whole thing because we got no time to do any of the stuff that we really want to. So, but every so often you get a little sweet treat of like a shot that you really, really wanted to, and you fight for it, but then you gotta They say like, kill your babies. Always would. It's like you get that, but you gotta kill your babies. So, like all the other things that you want to achieve, you're just not gonna have time.
Yeah, right here.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Huh?
we'll hit you then. We'll go.
Sounds good. Anyway, just wanted to say I think you guys did a great job with this film. I really love the very unique kind of angle where it's just like clairvoyantception of someone tapping into a mind within a mind. And that set piece at the end with the big flesh throne reminded me of something you'd seen in a Baczynski painting, which was sick. But I also noticed every time Cynthia, Ashley's character, tapped into someone's mind, she had this very elaborate and appropriate costume change. And I'm wondering what was the idea behind that.
Yeah, no, every time she went into someone's mind, it was really important to have her wardrobe reflect not only the environment and the mind, but kind of what her presence is in their mind. So that's why, you know, in the first one, she's in this kind of blue regal robe with this kind of golden chest piece. And one, you know, the school colors that she's going into are gold and blue, or yellow and blue. So we wanted that to kind of reflect, you know, this trauma that this kid's had in this school. And we also wanted to make her feel like a regal presence, like something that was just like not part of this, like something that had almost like an authority or something. But every time you go into someone's mind, we wanted it to reflect it. Some of the stuff actually got cut out. Like there's a full scene where Jordan and Cynthia talk about this dress that her father had bought Cynthia, and Cynthia was like, I hated it. It was so god ugly. It was this red dress thing, but he loved it so much, so I loved it, you know? And that was special to Jordan, and so that's why every time she goes into Jordan's mind, she's wearing this red dress that father had bought her. And yeah, no, I'm
sorry, but why did that scene get cut? Just out of curiosity, was it pacing or time? Yeah.
Honestly, there was, you know, every movie that you do as well, it's like you get to a point where you've got the rough cut and it's like 2.5 hours long, and you're like, oh my god, we gotta cut all, kill your babies.
What are you making here, Godfather 2? Like, question just behind.
Yeah. First of all, I want to congratulate you on It Feeds. I thought that it was a awesome, well done horror film for you. Like, my question is that how much of the special effects is practical and how much of it is CGI?
Stole my question. That's a great question. Yeah. How much is in frame? And can you give us some? Do you want to give some examples of potentially how you kind of put the two together?
Yeah, I'm gonna toot Chad's horn here a bit too. So there's almost there is slight touches of VFX. Some of the tentacle scenes, like when they're coming down from the attic, are enhanced VFX. We did some things with the creature's eyes. We did some things, just enhancements. The Doug Ferry, the coach, at the beginning, like his face is a little distorted. There was some VFX there. Most of what you see on screen is practical special effects. And it was something that Chad had a really unrelenting, like, clear vision in his head of what he wanted to achieve. And when our special effects makeup team were fantastic, we're running up against the wall. Chad, because he's done this so many times himself on like a shoestring budget, would go in with like, you know, a jug of black goo and smear it on the actress's face, and they'd be like, oh my god, yeah, now she's ready. You know, it was wild. It was wild to see, but yeah, like so much of that. Even in the throne room when the tentacles are, you know, getting pulled away, like those were all practically built tentacles that we, you know, kind of dragged back and then reversed the footage, which kind of gave it a cool, like, Evil Dead kind of feel to it. But yeah, there was a lot of things done practically here, which, you know, take longer on the day, but, you know,
If it's in frame, it looks better, right? Like if it's on the screen, I know there's a lot of, there's a, I don't know if it's a controversy, I don't think it's necessary, but there's a It's like if your brain sees something on the screen, it's like if it's actually there, it processes it differently than if it's digital. There's a point of
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it is that, you know, we've never had money for VFX, so we're always like,
how do we build this?
if it looks good on the day when you're shooting it, then you know you got something. If you're relying on post, you often get like, okay, well, here's your VFX and all the money you spent on it, and it looks like crap, and now that you're stuck with it, you know?
Other questions? Yeah, just in the back there, back left. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
When they're like stabbing the thing, like you're like killing it, are they like actually stabbing something, or are they just like stabbing at like air?
They're stabbing at, it's a little bit of a mix between the real creature that we had with Brooklyn Marshall in it, who we have to do a shout out to because she was amazing. She's like,
Make sure. If you haven't seen Brooklyn not as the creature, it's like at the furthest ends of the spectrum.
She's not one.
She's not. She's actually a very sweet person. Yeah.
she's like a ballet, she's all about being elegant and beauty, which is so funny. But yeah, no, we did a mix of that, and then we did a mix of like a foam creature that we had made, that, you know, was at the end of the shoot, and in all honesty, was like, I went home and I stayed up all night and just like tried to recreate something because we ran out of money to pay anyone to do it. And yeah, I showed up the next day and it worked out, but yeah, no, they were stabbing a weird foam thing.
In the frame, though. At the very back, yeah.
Great film. Congratulations, guys. Really looked very good. I wanted to commend the set deck, which is where my question is. So, what was the inspiration for the glowing things with the vines, and what did you actually use physically?
Just so if nobody people are wondering, it's what was used for like the vines, like the tentacles and stuff that was growing through the house. Yeah.
Yeah, there was, like in the creature's lair, which I think you're asking about, there was, there's these little kind of tumor things that we had built, and they were all built by Steve Kostansky, who did like Psycho Gorman and The Void, and yeah, awesome. And
more than that for Steve.
And he had
I
built
gotta
all,
keep these guys honest.
and he had built all the tentacles as well, which I use as Halloween decorations in my house every year now.
As you should.
Yeah.
These Halloween decorations.
Actually,
by Steve.
the producer of The Void used to live next to me, and he used like he had a corpse with it was just a torso. There was no arms, no legs, no head, and it was like tied up with chains, and he put it out in front of his house. And I remember I was sitting there giving out candy, and this little boy walks up and starts crying, and looks to his mom and goes, "Is that Jesus?"
It was.
And it was singing. But
We're done. That's
yeah,
the end of the
yeah, But no, I wanted those little glowing kind of egg things, and I had gone and I built one myself just out of foam and latex in my basement and painted it all, and I was like, I'm just gonna make all these, and then after I did one, I was like, holy shit, this is a lot of work. So we hired Steve to do it. But yeah, all those were really, you know, with this whole idea of like cancer and tumors, and like I just wanted kind of these like glowing little tumors around the lair, and all the vines were really, you know, in my head, they were kind of supposed to be like veins of this tumor, you know, this kind of living organic thing.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Daryl?
Me? So I've been a fan of you guys for quite a while, and the quality of your stuff has always been great, but I gotta say, as somebody who has also lost an uncle and a father in the past couple years to cancer, this is like next level, man. Whatever you were tapping into for this is like next level. Fantastic job on the project. I know there was a bigger gap between I'll Take Your Dead in this film, and in that time you guys kind of have a partnership with Cody. and you got to see him make Oak Room and Vicious Fun in the meantime. Were you kind of riding that wave, I think, from like taking in everything you're learning on those bigger projects and putting that towards this one? Or do you guys kind of work more in separate kind of areas?
No, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. It's very, very hard. Yeah, I mean, I think going through the gap, I was happy to be producing for a while. I had done movie projects, and then I got out of that after. And at that point, me and Cody generally go back and forth. But I had done 2 in a row, and then he kind of came in and he had some projects that he had.
Yeah,
developed in a
because you
while.
guys typically, like if Cody directs, you produce, if you direct, Cody produces,
Yeah.
and kind of, that's part of Black Hawk Films, right, so.
Yeah, and yeah, but I mean, both those projects were so fun and so awesome, and you know, have been developed for a long time. And I mean, you know, on a low budget, we've always been able to make our movies because we're all so hands on deck. So even with those movies, it's like, you know, I co-director, I directed the B unit stuff, and there was like a day where Cody was sick that I did on Vicious Fun as well. So I mean, we were always so in sync that it was like, if one of us goes down, it's like the other one steps in, and you know, really, you know, for the last 20 years of us making movies, we've been like, man, anytime there's any role that needs to be filled, you know, we were both side by side doing those things, or you know, the people that we were working with as well. It really felt like, you know, there's just a ton of people that were really working to make something awesome, and we'd all just kind of fill in the roles. And yeah, I'm super proud of those films too. Like they're, you know, I'm so happy that, I was so fulfilled being able to, you know, help do those, and then through Black Hawk Distro release them as well.
Any other questions to, yes, just, okay, at the very back, and then we'll go to this gentleman right here. Yep, just the back. Yes, yep.
On personal commentary, I love the character of Agatha, but I noticed that this movie paired true crime and the mystical very well, supernatural. And I was wondering if the true crime elements were something you wanted involved in the movie from the very beginning, or if that was just part of the story you were trying to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think something with this movie, once I started writing it, that I realized as soon as you can break reality, you are open to do kind of whatever you want. And I really took it as an opportunity to be like, how can I bring in all the films that I love and all the things that I've wanted to do as a filmmaker, and just like, you know, use them as puzzle pieces and see if they fit. So I mean, I always loved the movie The Ring, and I love, you know, more so than, not even the horror element of it, but I think like the investigation element of it, I've always loved. Like, I just think that movie's so awesome, and it got so popular, and you know, like, it just became something that was like, it's so popular that it's not cool to like The Ring anymore, you know? But man, that movie scared the hell out of me, and I always love it. So that was a big inspiration for, you know, some of the investigative work. And then, you know, as well, I love Nightmare on Elm Street, so even when she pops up in front of, you know, the creepy house, it's like we brought the keys in there that kind of like were a throwback to the music in Nightmare on Elm Street when she pops up in front of the house on Elm Street. But also movies like Event Horizon, you know, I always loved the crazy flashy moments near the end of that movie, where it's like, you know, we'd always press pause and try to see like the screwed up, you know, frames that are kind of like being flashed in front of your eyes. That was a big inspiration for that moment whenever the creature goes into Jordan's mind, and it's like just a cerebral assault on you of all these like images. What else? The Cell, obviously, you know, I love that movie. So, you know, there's some obvious inspiration there. Also, The Fountain. I love Darren Aronofsky.
Yes.
And, you know, The Fountain was a big inspiration for kind of, you know, her coming in this weird medieval, you know, attire, going into this lair at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Sir, you were right in the middle of the theater, sir.
I'm just keeping it light. I was just gonna. What's next for Chad Archibald here?
Oh, man, what's next?
I produced a movie called The Undertone. That's all done now. It's just in post. And it stars Nina Kiri, who was in The Heretics and Let Her Out, as well as Handmaid's Tale. So that one we're just wrapping up right now. And yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's next for me. It's I got a bunch of stuff that I'm writing and working on right now, but you know which one's gonna land, I don't know.
We're just trying to get off the road right now, but yeah, it's a great question just because like we're always talking about ideas. I know you are, and especially with Cody.
Evan produced the TV show Revival.
Yeah, it's a show called Revival. It's coming out soon on Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh yeah.
Any other questions? Just
I like sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about the fashion as well.
2 months.
Okay, I was
2
wondering.
questions? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the fashion as well. And in the end, I noticed that she was wearing the red floral dress that was in the Jordan's memory and also in the family photo that they had. And then Jordan was wearing white. I'm just wondering, what was the significance of bringing it out of the mind into like reality?
But she's still in her mind at the end. Is that
Like when it goes out, she's wearing the red dress as she's
Oh,
sitting.
like for the last shot of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was something that, you know, in reality, I think that dress was packed away somewhere and something that was part of the trauma that they dealt with. And I think by showing them, you know, 6 months later and them being ready to kind of deal with their trauma and deal with, you know, these things that they had gone through, the idea was that she had pulled it out and she was ready to actually put it on again. And, you know, use that as kind of part of them kind of going through this process of overcoming their, this trauma that they've been holding on to for a long time.
And one last question. Yes? You
How many days has it taken to shoot the movie?
Sorry, what's that?
How many days has it taken to shoot the movie?
How many days did it take to shoot the movie?
I think we shot 23 days in total with like
It was 20 days.
20 days with 3 days of pickups. What? And some of those were just like getting exterior shots. So it went very, very quickly. And there was, and I'll just say it because at least I can say it. But there was one scene that I really, really wanted to get that was in the script where after Cynthia goes into the creature's mind, she wakes up in this weird pool with this crazy headpiece. And she kind of like comes out of the water and it's all slow motion and weird. And she's in this forest, and as she walks through this forest, there's all these kind of like rotting people hiding behind the trees, watching her. And she goes down into this crevice of this cave that we found at, I feel like it's a bad word, but karst. It's like the karst conservation area in Hamilton. Because it was like every day, it was like at lunch, it'd be like, dude, we gotta lose karst. We gotta lose karst. And I'm like, no, we have to shoot this. And then, you know, she gets down to this opening of this cave at the bottom of this kind of like crevice, and these tentacles are coming out, and whenever she goes in there, then it cuts to that scene of her kind of like flashing through that tunnel, and then she comes out in the creature's mind. In the end, even if we shot it, it probably would have been cut out. But I fought to the end of time to shoot this scene, and I was like, I am not giving up on this.
Kill your babies!
Yeah, that was the one, yeah. That was the big one.
Awesome. Well, that does it for our Q&A. Just big thanks to you guys, Chad and Hyland, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you coming down to London. And of course, thank you to all of you for coming out and watching it feeds. We really, really appreciate it. And big thanks to the Hyland and their, one last thing before I go, sorry, two quick things. I need you guys to make a lot of noise for the staff and everyone that works out front and works and also because of this film, and like, I mean, I think it's because it's about, like, it has something to do with cancer. I lost my dad to cancer too a few years ago as well. So let's do 1, 2, 3, fuck cancer, and then we'll get the fuck out of here. Okay? So ready? 1, 2, 3.
Fuck cancer!
Thanks, guys. Take care.
A lot of middle fingers there.
Yeah.